point um, while we're talking. Today's session is going to be a little different than some of these I've done in the past because the real estate market's a little different right now. Typically, when I've done open house trainings, we spent a lot of time talking about how to get people to come to your open house. That's not really a problem right now. Actually, the problem is how to manage the chaos of the open house. And I typically speak to that as well. And I'm going to modify that slightly because it's almost unmanageable, some of these open houses at this point. So I really want to focus in on the open house as a lead generating system. And I think right now it's better than ever for that. And there are new and unique challenges, but getting leads from the open house has never been better. And in my opinion, it's always good. And with that, let me just begin by saying I've been coaching and training agents in the area of sales and leadership development for a number of years. And typically, I am asked, what's the latest and greatest fad to get leads? When someone says they want to schedule some time with me and come on my calendar so they can grow their business, they're almost always saying to me, how can I get leads? And while there is always typically something fun and exciting and new that's effective if you have enough money, um, there are historical ways to get leads that have always worked, and I usually recommend those. They're not always as attractive, maybe, as, hey, I can push a little money over here and my phone starts ringing. That's always nice, but they're more dependable and they're often low cost. And so, to quote some other coaches in the industry, I'll just say that unless you're doing 4 to 6 million a year in real estate business and transactions, those are really your best bet, those historical things. I mean, why would I spend $1,000 to get a transaction if I have the time available on my calendar to get those leads for free? However, once you're doing 6 million, you might not have the margin on your calendar to do some of the things before you have to kind of pay to get the leads. And so then those more pay for play type lead generating systems are your best bet, but they don't have near the same return as some of these historical methods. So that's why I'm often disappointed that even new agents want to spend $3,000 to $5,000 a month in lead generating when their calendars are empty, and they could go do things that work, and spend 10 to 15, 20 hours a week getting leads without spending any money. And that's what we're focused on here today is open houses. Open houses is one of those things, like several things in real estate, that we do the way we do because we've always done it that way. There's no other reason. Why do we run open houses this way? That's how we've always done it. And I'll refer back to this illustration several times in today's training, but it's a lot like buying a car. Why is it when you go to a car lot, it is the way it is? Because they've always done it that way. Do you like it? Do they really want to sell that way? Nah, but it's what we've always done. It works. We're going to keep doing it that way. Okay, well, we don't have to be like that. As an outsider to the industry coming in, and I started doing real estate training about 6 to 8 years ago, I looked at the open house model and thought, man, it's a lot like buying a car. The agent's kind of waiting at the door and the person walks in and we kind of jump on them. And the first couple questions we ask them are not necessarily the best questions. And then there's really no like setup for long-term relationship building. It's more of like a drip campaign, spam campaign. And usually the first question we ask them is if they're working with another agent. And we just believe we need to ask that. And there's a lot of that involved that is not, as an outside sales trainer looking in, would not be the best way to approach the sales process, in my opinion. And so what I'm going to give you today is kind of a unique way, and it's not radically different than what you're doing, but kind of a unique way to handle the open house so that when you have open houses, you're actually getting leads and establishing appointments going forward. And you have kind of a reliable system for that. All right, that's enough of an intro on that. I'm going to share my screen here. I have very few slides today, very, very, very few. But I'm going to share my screen. So we have a couple things to look at other than just my face. So I call this lead generating open houses or pipeline building open houses. It's open houses so we can get more business. That's the idea here. Not necessarily just to sell the house. That's part of it. But that's what we're here to do, is talk about it as leads. So I'm curious, why are you here? I mean, obviously, you came to find out some ways to get leads. But what are your thoughts on open houses as lead generating? How's it working out for you now? Are you getting leads from open houses? Jump into the chat if you will. The chat, not the Q&A. And when you jump into the chat, at the bottom, you'll click chat. I'm just going to do it with you. So when you click chat, you'll need to select all participants. Here we are, chat. All participants. It defaults to all panelists. You'll need to put all panelists and attendees so everyone can see what you're saying. I'll give you an example. I'll type hello into the chat now. So I had to change it to all panelists and attendees. I'm the only panelist. So maybe take a couple minutes and write in there, hey, what are you hoping to take away from today, so I make sure I cover it, any specifics about open houses you're concerned about, or maybe just tell us how well are open houses working for you as far as lead generating. While you do that, I'll tell you a quick story. When I first about 5 years ago, did my first open house training with a group of folks, I had a lady in the back say, I'm just here because my friend's here. Open houses don't work. I said, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean open houses don't work? And she began to tell me why they didn't work. And I said, well, tell me how you run your open house. And she began to tell me how she ran her open house. And I said, well, kindly, that's why they don't work. Because that method doesn't work. Open houses do work. And I've got a long laundry list of clients to prove it. But we do need to look at how we do it. And actually, I love what Don put in there. I've done an open house and couldn't get everyone to sign in. Yeah. Why do we have to get everyone to sign a piece of paper when they enter the door? And so that's something we're going to address today, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up. Some of our open houses are in foreclosed listings and it turns clients off. Yeah. And we won't spend a lot of time talking about this, but I'm going to tell you, here's the open houses you should be doing. I'll just say it right at the beginning. Do the open houses where you are a listing agent. I think that, well, depends. As a listing agent, you should come up with a marketing plan with your seller. I recommend that you always have a consultation with your seller and you spend some time walking through how you're going to sell their house and getting them to kind of sign off on the marketing plan so that expectations can be managed. So if we're going to manage expectations, they should have a marketing plan. If that marketing plan includes open houses, then you need to do an open house simply for the sake of your seller. It's just kind of like posting it on Facebook that their house is for sale. Sometimes it's just for seller facing stuff so that they have that visibility. However, that's as a listing agent, you're kind of forced to do it, or to at least make sure somebody on your team is running an open house there, typically with the marketing plan. However, if it's not your listing, the reason to do the open house is to get leads. And so if you're doing open houses to get leads, not just your own listings, but you're doing it for other people, if that's why you're doing it, then the open houses you should do are only in places where you would want to get leads. You would think that would go without saying, but I see this all the time. I'm doing open houses, but I mean, I wouldn't even have taken this listing. Well, then the people coming there aren't your prospects. Let someone else have it. But if it's, if you want to say get a lot more leads at 400,000 and above, then you should be doing open houses at 400,000 and above, which begs the question, well, I don't have listings like that. How do I go and run open houses at 400,000 and above, or at 500, 600,000 and above? Well, the answer is you have to connect with other agents. And those other agents have to learn about you and your core values and your process and why it's a benefit to them. And then you have to offer to do open houses to help them. And one of the best ways, I'm kind of getting ahead of things, but it's a good place to start. One of the best ways to do that is to go to pitch sessions. Because when you go to a pitch session, you'll see an agent that's, hey, like I've got this kind of tough to sell listing, it gets a lot of traffic, but maybe it's at 650, 700,000. And, I'm pitching it to you so you'll tell people about it. And you can go to them and say, maybe especially if it's sat for a while, which I know doesn't happen right now, but it'll happen again. And you can say, hey, when are you running open houses? Oh, I do one a month. Well, how about I do it on all the other weekends? Or how about if you do one in the morning, I continue it into the evening? Or how about I do one during the week? Why? Well, it's going to help sell the home. I've got a great process. It looks good for the seller, and it gives you an opportunity to get buyer leads. Um, I have found that it's not hard to keep yourself doing 4 to 6 open houses a month when you follow that process. But if you're only doing it through your brokerage and signing up on a list, you might be limited, especially if you're new. So you're going to have to get out there and network to be able to have more opportunities and pitch sessions. They've got a great one at Pro. The affiliates do is a great way to do that. So a couple of you have had a few clients. I do one every weekend. That's best, especially if you're under that 4 million a year in sales. I would say, definitely shoot for 3 a month. Would be ideal, especially following this process we're going to talk about. And then, some more on the signing in. We're going to cover that. Good. And if you think of open houses as lead generation, then really you want to be there as long as you can, right? So it's really just what you can tolerate. If you don't have much of a pipeline, you're kind of new, you're doing under 1 million a year, and you've got people that'll let you run their open houses, and I'd do them as often as I could. Of course, you got a work-life balance you've got to maintain, but if you can go in from Saturday morning from 9 or 10 to 4, and the seller will let you do that, and you can do that Saturdays and Sundays and maybe one evening in the week. It might sound crazy, but if you're getting traffic, that's free lead gen. It's free lead gen. If you're not getting traffic, or it's, that's just too much for your work-life balance, well, then that's fine. But I tell you what, you're going to get a lot more traffic that way than, floor hours, depending on your location. Floor hours doesn't get the leads that the traffic that open houses typically do. I mean, maybe if you do floor hours on the beach on a Saturday, there's some great brokers down there right on Clearwater Beach, right on the main walk. They probably get some traffic on Saturday. I'd be chomping at the bit to do those floor hours. But for the most part, open houses are kind of the floor hours on steroids. All right. We don't have a lot of time. Can't say it all. Let's jump in. So that's why you're here. Let's make sure we scratch that itch. So I like to call it the old versus the new normal. So back in the day, open houses really were, I was already kind of speaking to this, nothing more than kind of real estate's version of a car dealership. The agent would kind of come and just kind of sit there and didn't really interact with people too much. They'd come in. The first question we always asked them is, do you work with an agent? What are you looking to buy? How many bedrooms? How many baths? What's your budget? Are you pre-qualified? It's kind of like showing up to a car dealership and the first thing they say to you is, what's it going to take to get you into this thing today? Are you, how much money do you have? It's not necessarily the best way. Does it work? Yes. Is it broken? Not entirely. Is it best? No. So we can do better. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So first thing I want to talk about is kind of a strategy surrounding open houses. So one of the things that all entrepreneurs struggle with, especially realtors, is not so much the ability to sell or build relationships. Most of you are pretty natural at that. It's more consistently building our business, right? Like most agents are pretty good at calling people and asking how they're doing, or even asking for referrals. But what we're bad at is doing that consistently every single week. It's consistency that wins the game. It's like working out. A lot of people are really good at working out. They just do it once a month. That's not enough. You got to do it 3 to 5 times a week. So I've formulated something called sticky strategy. It's not complicated, but what sticky strategy is it's taking one element of your prospecting or marketing plan and making sure that every other aspect connects to it, so that doing one thing is doing all things. Let me explain what I mean. So let's just take the open house as the anchor point of your sticky strategy. I call it the anchor. So let's say you determine you're going to do 2 open houses a month. And your open houses, you don't have to just stare at that screen. I'll let you look at me here. So your open houses are, say, 2 a month on Saturdays. Now we're going to employ sticky strategy. What's that look like? What that looks like is you would go to the neighborhood, say the Thursday, you'd go to the house the Thursday before you ran the open house on the Saturday. And while you're there, you walk through it, you make sure, it's ready for the open house. Sometimes I strongly recommend you freshen up the mulch in the front walk, maybe pull a couple weeds, things like that. Freshen up the bathrooms, make sure that you have the waters there and the toilet paper in the bathrooms, whatever. You can go ahead and kind of set up in advance. And, maybe go around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday, and the neighbors are usually out and about at that point in time. And you can kind of go door to door, just up and down the street there, and just introduce yourself. Maybe take a little flyer if you have it, but if not, just take a business card and just introduce yourself to the neighbors, knock on the door, and just let them know, hey, my name's, I would say my name is Tom. I'm with ABC Realty. I just want to give you the courtesy that we're going to have an open house here on the weekend. Especially right now, this is really necessary because you need to let them know what the street's going to look like, because it's going to be packed with cars right now. So just wanted to let you know, there's a chance we could get a lot of traffic to the open house. Wanted to let you know that's why. The open house is from this time to this time. Just want to give you some friendly neighborhood courtesy on that. We expect to have a lot of traffic because this is a great place to live. And through that, they'll usually say, okay, great. Well, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for letting me know. And at that point in time, you can definitely easily say to them, hey, this is a great neighborhood. How long have you lived here? Have some small chat if it makes sense. Get their name, find out how long they've lived there, and then let them know, hey, if you want to come down and see the open house, sometimes neighbors aren't sure if they can do that. You're free to come on down and check it out. Grab a cookie and a water. Meet your potential future neighbors if you want. If you have any friends that are interested in coming and interested in moving into the neighborhood, and they're not able to make the open house, then here's my card. You can always schedule a private tour with me. I'd be happy to do that. And just kind of make that connection, especially because once you get an offer on that house, or once you're under contract on that house, it's great to go back and say, hey, remember me? Wanted to let you know it's under contract. Are you curious what it went under contract for? And you can start talking to them about pricing of that house, and then a little bit about their future plans, and offer a free consultation to go ahead and price their house out so you have all the data already. And as you can see, what are we rolling towards? Becoming their future agent or a referral source for them as the local expert. And so it's that relationship building. So it's sticky strategy. Every single time I have an open house, now I'm knocking 10 to 15 doors. I have an excuse to knock the doors. I have a reason. Even if you're not comfortable with door knocking, you have a reason. It's a courtesy. And you're just so happen to have then the opportunity to potentially talk to them about more, or at least to build a relationship. What's another thing you can do? Well, like I said, when the house goes under contract, you can go back and knock on the door again. When the house finally sells, you can go back. When the house sells and you're and the buyer moves in, if you represented the buyer, you can throw in a housewarming party and go and meet those neighbors. You come up with your own little plan and you just do it every single time. You might want to write letters to everyone in that neighborhood, letting them know about the open house, or letting them know that the house is for sale, and inviting them to come and see it. This is called sticky strategy. So it's just one anchor point, the open house, combined with a whole lot of other prospecting, door knocks, phone calls, letters, multiple times. Why? Because the best place to get business in real estate is to kind of own a neighborhood, to conquer. The beachhead is the first listing or the first open house in the neighborhood. Once you've landed that beachhead, you want to spread out from there. One of the best agents I've ever worked with, she did it so well. She'd go and get a house, and she'd meet all the neighbors while she was there. She was there all the time. She would get that whole street to know her. And then once that house sold, she'd go to everyone on the house and say, I can sell yours for more now, because we sold it for this, and I know now that's gone up. Now I can just ask for 10 above that one. And literally, she would sell a house, sell the 3 houses down for 10 above the last one, and then the next one for 10 above that one. This was in a townhome community she did this in, and she knew the neighborhood really well, ins and outs, how to sell it. Everyone knew her. It was easy. It was just easy. No cold calling necessary. She already knew the whole place. I've seen people do this in 55 and over communities really effectively, townhome communities and small neighborhoods really well. And then that's why you see those realtors, their faces on every sign in the neighborhood, right? Because they've learned how to do that. What is that? A sticky strategy. Make the most of these open houses. All right, with that, let's dive into how these open houses, how this strategy actually works. All right, so I call this the pro coach process. My company is called Stronghold Training, but I'm also the senior coach for Pro Coach at Pro, and so I just developed this called the pro coach process. So unfortunately, I don't have, not unfortunately, I don't have slides for this. I'm gonna have to draw this for you. Normally I would do this on a whiteboard if we were together, but I'm gonna try to draw it with Zoom. This could get funny. But I'm gonna kind of draw a process. I want to walk through the actual open house. Now, if you were wanting to know how to get people to the open house, stuff like that, I'll talk about that more at the end with time remaining. But what I want to just kind of show right now is how to get leads from the open house. And it has a lot to do with how you handle the open house itself. So I'm going to walk you through my process and kind of contrast that with what we might typically do. So I'm going to draw. I am an artist, clearly. So here's our people walking in here. All right, advanced. So that's our couple. All right, our couple walks in. The door is right here, nice and open and inviting. And what we are going to do, ideally, again, this is ideal. I'm going to talk about when it gets weird and when it gets difficult. But ideally, we are going to greet them when they walk in the door. Really simple, right? Welcome in. Even if you're having a conversation with someone else, you're going to greet someone when they walk in the door. I'm going to talk about how to break away from those conversations in a minute. So they walk in, welcome in. You walk up to them and you introduce yourself. I know this sounds novel, but when I actually see open houses in neighborhoods, I pull in and I go in, and I'll tell you, rarely does this ever happen. The agent typically does not introduce themselves. They walk right up, keep it impersonal, and say, what are you looking for? Or are you working with an agent? That is no way to start a relationship. No way to start a relationship. Could you imagine being on a date and the first thing you ask someone is, are you looking for a spouse? It's awkward. You didn't even introduce yourself yet? You got to introduce yourself. Don't miss this. Welcome in. Hi, my name's Tom with ABC Realty. Hey, thanks so much for coming in today. What's your name? Just like that. What's your name? They tell you the name. Oh, here's our names. Great. Hey, well, what brought you in today? We were just in the neighborhood. We saw the open house sign. We live down the street. We're looking for a friend of ours. We're looking for a son or daughter. We're looking for a house. We're looking for an investment property. Whatever it is, they're going to tell you their why right there in the beginning. They know your name, you know their name, and you know their why. All right. That's very, very important. Now, your primary purpose here as the agent is to actually represent the seller or the seller's agent and show the house. So even though we're going to get leads through this process, we don't want to overstep this. And this is very important when you're telling other agents why you should represent them in open houses. You need to tell them my primary purpose is to sell the house. And by the way, the best way to demonstrate yourself as a capable agent is to do your job well, not to just try to get their info. So I do not have a sign-in sheet, and I do not ask them to fill anything out right here. Now, I notice that some people have like security concerns with that. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end, but I do not ask for their information, nor do I ask if they're working with an agent, because I'm not doing anything right now other than my job, which is to show them the house. And it doesn't matter if they're working with an agent. I can show them the house. I'm not doing anything else. So I don't fill anything out. I got their name. I can write it down so I remember it, but that's all I'll do. So welcome in. My name's Tom with ABC Realty. Thanks so much for coming in. What's your name? What brings you in today? Great. Hey, thanks for sharing that with me. So there's two ways we can go from here. You're going to give them the process. Two options. All right. Option number one is I can give you the guided tour, room by room, HGTV style. I can give you the guided tour of the house, answer any questions you have, and I've got some information for you at the end. It's option one. Option two is you can do the self-guided tour. Tour path is that way, head down that way, kind of check out the whole house. And then when you're all done, we'll meet wherever your final room will be. It's typically the kitchen. We'll meet in the kitchen. I want to get some information from you and get some feedback from you and give you some information as well. Which would you like to do? Self-guided tour or guided tour? I know what you're thinking. Most people go, well, we'll just show ourselves around. You are wrong. It's going to be about 50-50. If you seem personable, it's going to be about 50-50. And so about 50% will say, yeah, go ahead and show us around. Now, let's just say that this first group goes on the guided tour. So here we go on the guided tour. Now, I strongly recommend that you have a television set right here in the living room with a game console to park their kids if they're having a hard time parking them themselves. Hey, if your kids want to play some, you don't have to force them to, right? Hey, if your kids want to play some PlayStation, we got that going on right here. Typically a cheap gaming console you can pick up for 20 or 30 bucks from a pawn shop. Doesn't have to be the latest and greatest. It could be an old Nintendo. But if you can have a little game on a TV right there in the living room, even in an unfurnished house, that helps, because we all know kids in empty houses go berserk, mine included. And so that's a great little thing to have right there. And we take them on the guided tour. The tour is fast. You simply walk in, show them the room, and while you're doing that, you can ask some questions. How long you've been looking? You find anything yet? But don't go too deep. Just kind of surface level. Mainly, what are you there to do? Show the house, right? So do that, and do that well, because you're demonstrating your value through doing that. You'll have plenty of chances to find out all of the stuff about them as your leads in the future. So you give them the tour. We go all the way around, show them all the rooms. Shouldn't take long. If you aren't asking them a ton of questions, getting into deep conversation, just a few light questions, then we get to our final destination right here in the kitchen. And we're going to stop and we're going to ask them these questions. It's the same for everyone, whether they were on the self-guided tour and they met us in the kitchen or they're on the guided tour. You're going to say, all right, well, you've seen the house now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well does this house meet your needs? If they are anything above an 8, you are in a potential offer situation. You need to focus on that. If they are a 7 or below, all you need to do is this follow-up question. Well, what did the house mainly need that it didn't have? What was the most important thing it lacked? And they might say a pool, fence, just a layout, whatever. You write that down. All right. 1 to 10, 8 and above is going to be an offer situation. We need to get into that mode, and you should know how to do that. Hey, we need to contact the seller. We need to do whatever we need to do. But I suggest you put your offer in. That's when you would ask them if they were working with an agent at that point. But let's just assume that most people aren't going to put an offer in on the house. It's going to be a 7 or below. Then you're going to ask them, what did it miss? They're going to tell you, and you're going to follow up with this line every single time. Thanks for sharing that with me. Here's what I suggest we do. I suggest we schedule a 15-minute phone call, just a brief kind of intro call here this evening or tomorrow. I think I can be a resource for you. That's it. So three things we said. Scale of 1 to 10 question. If they're 7 and below, what did the house miss? Third thing, here's what I suggest we do. Schedule a 15-minute call this evening or tomorrow. I believe I can be a resource for you. And then you shut up and you let them tell you yes or no. I have not yet asked them if they're working with an agent. I'm going to cover that here in a second. Let's say they say, yes, we'd be happy to talk to you further, see how you can help us out. Great. Then you go ahead and schedule that 15-minute call. You get their phone numbers, email address. If you want to send them a calendar invite, I strongly suggest you do. And you say, I look forward to our call tonight. Okay, I'm going to cover that call in a second. Now, let's say they go, no, we're good, or no, we're working with somebody, or no, I think we're good. You say, no problem. Hey, if you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and you can hand them a business card. And that's it. Nope, I don't collect their email address. I don't put them on a drip list like every single other agent's going to do so that they can unsubscribe from it. I've already offered to help them and they said no. I can give them my business card and they're free to reach out to me. And if you'd like to get their email address and put them on a marketing list where you send them stuff, that's fine. But I want to be honest with you. If you think that that method is going to somehow bring a lot of people back and you're banking on that, it's not very effective. And if you want to do it, do it. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Okay. But don't let it be a substitute for asking for the appointment, because the appointment is what's going to close the business. So put them on a drip list if you want. That's fine. But if you don't do it, you're not hurting my feelings. And I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. If you want to do it, then put them on the list. It's fine. Hey, I'm all about email marketing. Put them on the list. It's fine. But that's what you do. Okay, let's circle back. So you get them on a list, we're going to call them for 15 minutes this evening. They leave. Next group walks in. All right, you walk up. Welcome in. My name's Tom with ABC Realty. What's your name? Hello. What brought you in today? All right, perfect. Well, we have two options: self-guided tour, guided tour. Which one would you like to take? These guys say they're going to take the self-guided tour. All right. So we go ahead and we say, here's how it works. Tour route starts this way. Go check out the house. Work your way around the house. When you're done and you go to the kitchen, I will meet you there. Have a couple questions I want to ask you, get some feedback. And I've got some information. It's on your trusty clipboard. It's all that MLS stuff. Got some information I'm going to give you when you get there. Sound good? We get them to commit to that. Yes. Most people won't just leave the house because they committed to doing that in the kitchen. Even if you look busy, they'll give it a few minutes because they told you they would, and you had asked them to. So that no matter what, we can get those questions at the end to try to book the appointment. All right, I know what's already on your minds. Well, that works great if everybody walks in the house one at a time. Exactly. So what do we do, especially right now when it can get a little hectic? Well, I'm going to tell you what to do when it gets a little hectic. Although I'll be honest with you, as hectic as it can be right now, this might even get overwhelmed. And we'll talk about that too. But let's just say, let's go back to couple number one. They walked in and they took the guided tour. Well, I'm going to add something to that process. It's called the 2-step rule. You take 2 steps. All right, let's get going on the guided tour. 2 steps in and you stop. And you go, hey, before we go any further, there's a chance other people are going to walk in while we're on this tour. If they do, I'm going to step away for just a brief moment to go and greet them like I just did you. And then I'll be right back to meet with you. And they go, okay, because what we want to do is set them up. We don't want to be halfway through the tour and people start walking in the door and you're like, and they're like, no, go ahead. We'll take it from here. We don't want them jumping in and taking leadership. Guys, this is what we call a leadership-centered sales process. We're proactively letting people know how it works and getting them to kind of follow along that process. It's best for them. It's best for us. So we're just going to let them know, hey, if we get into this sticky situation, someone walks in, I'm going to step away for just a minute. So let's say we do that. They go, okay, we get to about here in the house. Now we're up here. And the other couple walked in. Hey, someone just walked in. You guys keep heading on. I'll be right back to meet you in just a minute. We run over here. Same greeting. Nothing changes. Welcome in. My name's Tom with ABC Realty. What's your names? What brings you in today? Awesome. We have 2 options, guided tour, self-guided tour. What if they say guided tour and we're already on a guided tour? No problem. We say, hey, guided tour, happy to. I'm just about finishing up a guided tour right now, maybe be 3 or 4 more minutes, 5 or 6 more minutes, something like that. Why don't you hang out here or hang out in this room right here? I'm going to finish up with them. I'll be right back to get with you. And most people will wait. Some people will say, well, we'll go ahead and get started. No problem. All right. But they know you're coming. So you see how we're setting them up? Let me pause here a minute and contrast that with our typical real estate open house. What we typically see is a realtor standing somewhere in the house. People walk in. They're asked if they're working with another agent, questions like that. Sometimes they begin trying to qualify them right there. And then they say, okay, just go look around because I'm not going to bother you, nor am I going to help you. Just go look around, right? And if you need me, come find me. And at some point, the realtor finds some group that they really like, some couple, some person that they really like, and they might spend 30 to 45 minutes chatting, and other people only can get your attention if they interrupt that conversation. And it's awkward. And it's so common. And you know what? I don't even want to blame the realtor for that. They just didn't know how else to do it. It's kind of what comes natural to us when we're kind of running this house party, if you will. We don't really want to step on people's toes. But how are you going to get a lead out of that? Well, enter in the sign-in sheet, right? Well, we'll put a sign-in sheet by the door. Everyone will give us their name, phone numbers, and email addresses. And then we'll just start sending them emails all the time. And hopefully they'll call us. Or maybe we'll call them. But now we're interrupting them at a time they weren't expecting our call to start a relationship because they don't have a relationship with us. When now is our opportunity to start the relationship on their terms concerning real estate at a time in which they're available. It's far better. It's far better. Don't chase people when you have them right here in front of you, guys. And this is just good classic sales process. It works in every industry. You don't want to have to go chase prospects. Now's the opportunity. That's just a name on a list. You could have pulled that out of the phone book. We don't need to do that. Okay. So back to our process. 2 steps. Hey, if this happens, I'm going to step away. No problem. We get them going. Hey, we might get 2 or 3 little groups here. Some on self tour, some on guided tour. But usually it's manageable. Normally up to 4 or 5 people, it's manageable. And actually, I personally used this exact process when I was in property management. I managed a community of 456 apartments. And on a Saturday, sometimes I was by myself and I would have traffic upwards to 10 tours within an hour. And this is the process I used. And it worked really well. I didn't even have the option for a self-guided tour because I didn't have a model that I could use. So that's why I had refreshments ready to go. Um, by the way, if you want to have them sign in because you feel it gives a little bit of a sense of security to have them have to give you a name or an ID, you're free to do so. In the apartment world, I always took an ID. We had to. That's up to you. But that's a different reason for the sign in than as a sneaky way to get their email address. People don't want to sign in because they don't want to give you personal information if there's no reason. So I don't want to start a relationship on tell me something personal even though I don't know you. I'll just get their name when they enter in a common way. Here's my name, what's yours? And then I'll get their name and email address and phone number when it makes sense because we have a value offer. I'm going to call you tonight and be a resource for you. All right, so that's what we do. And that's how we manage the flow of the traffic by telling them I'm going to step away. If someone comes in and I'll step right back, self-guided tour or guided tour, give them the option. Everybody's meeting in the final meeting place. When they get there, they get the 1 to 10. What did you like, not like? What was most important? Question. And then, hey, I think I can be a resource for you. Let me give you a call. Let's talk about that final question. Some people might ask you, what do you mean, be a resource for me? Some people might want to know what we're going to do on that call. Or you might feel that you want to tell them what you're going to do on that call. What's resource for me really mean? Well, what it means is you're going to simply gather more information. I'm going to ask you a lot more questions, see what's going on, because I think I could probably help you with your search. That's all. But I need to ask you some questions first. Now, technically, if this open house is dead, like there's no one coming in here, you can do that right there in the kitchen. Just start asking them the questions. The only reason why I make it another call is it forces them to kind of make a commitment, get some skin in the game, and then they're easier, more likely to convert to a prospect for you in the client for you in the future. That's one reason. The other reason is just so you can manage the flow of this traffic. But if there's really no traffic, you can go ahead and start asking them those questions now and do the intro call in person live. And then at the end of that, you would ask them for an hour-long sit-down consultation, which is where we're ultimately going with the intro call. And some of you are thinking, man, we really got to find out if they're working with another agent. I can't start working with someone unless they're working with another agent. And you're right. But there's a time and place where you must ask that and a time and place where it's optional. I don't have to ask someone if they're working with another agent to show them this house. I'm representing the seller. That's not necessary. I don't have to ask someone if they're working with another agent to say, would you like to schedule a call to see if I might be a resource for you? I can schedule a call to see if I might be a resource for them. I haven't offered them any information. I haven't worked with them or guided them or consulted with them at all. Fast forward to the call. So we have our 15-minute call, pick up the phone and call them. Hey guys, thanks so much for scheduling this call. Really looking forward to see how I can help you. All right, first question on the call is, are you actively working with another agent right now? That's my first question, but it's on the call before I've given them any real estate advice whatsoever. And notice the usage of words. I don't say, do you know an agent or do you have an agent? I say, are you actively working with another agent right now? Because everybody's got an agent. And all they have to do is tell you they got an agent and you got to stop. So we want to make sure we put it in the proper context. Are you actively working with another agent? And if they say they are, then you say, hey, thanks for letting me know that. I do think I could be a resource for you, but since you're already working with another agent, I'm not going to be able to go forward with you. So, hopefully your agent's giving you some great advice. If you want to have your agent reach out to me, or you guys want to reach out to me together about any questions, I'm happy to help. But other than that, I won't be able to be a resource for you. So if your situation ever changes, you can call me. And sometimes they'll go, well, it's my sister-in-law. And I'll say, well, are you actively working with her? Well, I mean, not really. Well, hey, listen, if you are not actively working and that relationship is clear and you want to have want me to be your realtor of record, we can move forward. But I want to make sure, because I have certain things I have to adhere to as a realtor, I want to make sure that those relationships are clearly defined. So if you want to reach out to them before we talk again, I advise you do so. And then just be very matter of fact about that, right? Don't put yourself in a mediation situation. And that's what you need to do. This isn't about sneaking in and robbing people away from other agents. It's about clearly defining roles. I don't need to do that until this point. And I shouldn't do it until this point. And here's why. Most people have been trained that telling someone you're already working with someone is a blow off that works, because it does. So if someone walks in the door and you say, are you working with an agent? They're going to say, uh-huh, so that you'll leave them alone. The problem is if they actually need help, now we've got a problem. You can't help them. And they're going to have to backpedal and be willing to admit that they're not really working with someone. And most people aren't willing to come clean like that. So we just avoid that situation. You need to know if they're working with an agent before you start working as an agent in their life, which is going to happen at the start of that introductory call. Hey, are you actively working with another agent? Yes, I am. All right, I'm not going to be able to help you from here, but should that situation change, feel free to reach out to me. Is there a quick question I could answer for you? You can do that. Well, we were curious to see how you might help us. Well, if you already engaged with another agent of record, I wouldn't be able to. And but that's why it's always the first question I ask on these calls. But I didn't need to ask that at the open house. Now, could I ask that at the open house before I booked a call with them? Yes, you could. Just make sure you do it after they've already committed to the call. Meaning, hey, let's go ahead and schedule a 15-minute call, see how I can be a resource for you. Sure, tonight at 6 is great. Perfect, you put them down. Hey, before we have that call, I'm just curious, are you actively working with another agent? That would be a perfectly fine place to put that question if you didn't want to wait till the call. Okay, makes sense? So just work in that way. What's the point of all this? The point of all this is simply this. DDTs. What is a DDT? A DDT is a day, date, and time. A day, date, and time. Oh, look at that. Hold on. There we go. A DDT is a day, date, and time on your calendar and theirs, which shows when you're next going to speak. In business, really in life, but especially in business, you never want to leave an interaction with someone that you want to continue with them without getting a DDT, a day, date, and time. Guys, gone are the days of I'll call you next week. We are too busy and no one answers their phone. Gone are the days of chasing and stalking prospects. You know why? First of all, they don't want you to do it, and it's always a bad time. You're interrupting. Second of all, you're not going to want to do it because you feel uncomfortable calling people constantly. You don't need to do it. When you're in front of them and you want to continue the conversation and they want to continue the conversation, get a date and time. Even if it's just a 5-minute appointment on your calendar to keep this in front of us. I never call someone next week. I always say, when's 5 minutes next week that we can touch base? And you go ahead and schedule the appointment. Also, and perhaps most importantly, is the time between now and that appointment. Why? Because between now and that appointment, they're going to have to make some decisions. How serious are they? They're going to start forward thinking. Well, we have an appointment to talk with an agent in a couple of days or in a couple of hours. And they're going to start preparing themselves mentally for that, which means when you do get together with them on that call, they're going to be prepared to have a serious conversation about where they're at. Where if you just would have called them out of the blue, they're not prepared to make decisions at that point in time. And if they do make a decision, it's typically to blow you off. So the DDT not only helps you keep people in front of you without chasing, but it's going to make sure that the people you talk to are prepared for the conversation. And sometimes the preparation they've made is to not talk to you. And then it's a clear no because they don't answer. And that's good too. Much better than leaving them 5 awkward voicemails with you saying, I don't want to be a pest. So that's what you got to do. The point of the open house is to demonstrate your expertise as you go around, establish a relationship, build some bonding and rapport and trust, and then to offer to be a resource by having our first DDT, which is an intro call. If you've already asked some introductory questions, what they're looking for, what's important to them, what their timeline is, if they've been pre-qualified, stuff you're going to ask on that intro call, if you've already done that, then you don't need to schedule a 15-minute call with them. You need to schedule a 1-hour consultation to sit down and start getting to work. And of course, before you would ask that, you would make sure they weren't actively working with another agent. This process, when followed scientifically and systematically and combined with the sticky strategy I gave you, is guaranteed to bring you regular, consistent pipeline leads. You're going to have 3 open houses a month, 2 to 3 open houses a month. You're going to try to get traffic at those open houses. You're going to follow this pattern, asking for appointments from every single person, knocking on doors up and down the street, asking them if they want consultations as once the house is under contract. Go back to them and ask them if they'd like a consultation on their house. You're going to get at least 1 to 3 DDTs, hopefully, from each open house, but even just one, that's 1 intro appointment, and you should be able to convert 2 to 3 out of 5 of those to consultations. And then out of that, you should be able to get a transaction. So the goal is for every open house you do, you should be, or every 2 to 3 open houses you do, you should be able to get 1 to 3 more transactions in the future. So that's kind of what I would say is average for people who do this well. It's just going to depend on traffic. It's going to depend on your ability to connect with people and ask these questions. And it's just going to depend on the market, obviously, and the house itself that draws people. But that's pretty typical, and that's pretty good. And so, especially if you're doing the door knocking and the consultations well, which I have another training on that I do on how to do those consultations and turn those into referral generating opportunities, even with people not ready to sell now. So that is basically how my open house process works. This is just more on DDTs. I've got about 10 minutes left. I know that was a lot, came at you kind of fast. Hopefully you were able to take some notes as to the process and get the key points away from that process. It's going to vary a little bit based on the layout of the home. It's going to vary a little bit based on the heavy traffic. So real quick note on that. Right now, you give an open house, you may have so many people walking in and out of the house that you can't handle it. What do? I actually recommend you follow the same process. Just the reality is you're probably not going to get to everybody. So still give everyone the guided tour option, or the self-guided tour. But no matter what, even if you make them all take self-guided tours, say, hey, before you leave, I'd like to, after you look at the house, before you leave, I'd like to ask you a couple questions, get your feedback, and give you some information. So if you have a house just they're piling in, put them all on the self-guided tour, that same commitment. And then basically you're just hanging out somewhere between the front door as people come in and the kitchen as people are exiting, or whatever rooms you choose to make that work. And you're asking them all the 3 questions, 1 to 10, what was it missing? Schedule time to be a resource for you, handing them the MLS sheet, getting their name and info, email address if you want, handing them your business card. And if it's an 8 or above, we're in an offer situation. So we're going to be focused on selling the home, getting the offer, letting them know how that works. If they're below an 8, we're going to be trying to set up that DDT. And then getting whatever information you want to get from them for the follow-up. If you do that, as well as the sticky strategy, you're going to have a much better time than just letting them come to you, hanging out, and just kind of passing the time. I've noticed that open houses keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and I have a philosophy as to why. I believe that the reason why most agents only do 2 to 3 hour open houses right now is because they're just showing up and having the house unlocked. You don't need to do that. The point of this is to build relationships. The first point is to sell the house and represent it well. The second point is to meet people that you can be a resource for and to schedule time with them. That's what you need to be doing this for. And if you're doing that well, it makes sense to go back to the 4 to 5 hour open houses if you can handle it. It's a work day, and you're there of floor hours. So, um, final note, don't read books. When someone walks in the door, don't be putting down the latest novel. You know what I mean? You can be on your laptop, whatever, but engage people when they come in. If you think, hey, well, it's a slow open house, I might be able to get some work done, try to put your little office off to the side. People feel really weird about thinking they're interrupting you. Also, I don't recommend that you take calls while you're giving tours ever. I just recommend that you don't take calls when you're with your clients ever or your prospects. It's one of the most off-putting things about agents. It's the number one thing people complain about with agents when they give their reviews. They seemed very busy and they were taking a lot of calls. How do we handle that? This is the last thing I'll say. You should schedule DDTs with your existing clients. Meaning, if you have a seller that you're working with, you should have a DDT on the calendar where you talk every single week, a standing DDT of, say, 15 to 30 minutes where you review where they're at. Sure, they can pick up the phone and call you anytime. Make yourself available. But if they know they have 30 minutes of your time every single week with a standing appointment, they're more likely to hang on to those calls for them. Same with buyers. You can have a standing call with them every single week and a standing time where you go look at homes. Can they call you at any time? Yes, and sometimes they need to. But if you have a standing time, a DDT, they're less likely to just be playing the phone tag game, which means when you're with clients, you can focus on those clients. So the DDT saves you from all this. It's just good professionalism. It's unfortunate that it's not commonplace in the industry. Why? As I said in the beginning, we do things the way we've always done it. So can't do that all the time. It's not a perfect world. But to the best of your ability, I suggest you do that. All right, that was a lot. Hopefully you got the nuggets and you know how you're going to change and apply that to your process. This will be absolutely worthless if you don't take something away, even if it's just the DDT, maybe the greeting, maybe the 3 questions at the end, maybe it's just the appointment setting. But take something